go.
We're good now?
So far, yeah, you're good to go. Have a great meeting, guys.
Thanks so much, Brandy. Really
No
appreciate it. Okay, so I'll call the February meeting of the Active Transportation and Sustainability Advisory Committee to order. I'd like to acknowledge that many of us are gathered on the territory of the Anishinaabe people, which include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, who are known as the Three Fires Confederacy. And this land is also covered by the Williams Treaties of 1923. And I like to remind myself of the stewardship on this land that has happened since time immemorial, as we do this work around sustainability and all these wonderful conversations we'll be having today. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I think we all know each other, so I will skip the round of introductions today. A bit of news. We did get a resignation from one of our members this morning. Maria Kavanaugh had to resign. Her job has been getting in the way of her ability to attend meetings, as we know. So sad to lose her and her expertise, but we wish her well in the future. Okay, so there was one change to the agenda, which is we will be rescheduling the presentation on the wayfinding project. The presenters just needed some more time on that piece. Any other adjustments to the agenda that we feel we need today?
Yes, Keenan, you can defer the Crompton Park update.
Okay.
And because I think I would love to take that time too to put it towards Bike the Night. And then just on the Maria's position, do we typically send out a thank you and/or invite her to stay engaged in any subcommittees or anything still connected to the committee? I'm not sure if that's more of a question for Brandy, but or what communication's gone out, but it would be nice to send a thank you to her for her contributions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll definitely check in with Wendy and see if there's anything that they normally do. For me, I haven't heard anything specifically. Normally when those come in, I would forward them off and then they would go from there. So I will check on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm thinking Bike the Night too might create an opportunity for her to be engaged if she's interested.
Great point. And for sure, I'll reach out to her. She just sent it this morning. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. See if she's willing to be engaged in other ways. Okay. So Bike the Night is the first item up then. And if our wonderful team wants to take it away, I don't know who's kind of leading the conversation on where you guys are at, but I'm excited to hear about what's been going on behind the scenes.
Am I missing anyone? If it's fair to say, John, Kelly and I have been connecting on moving this piece forward. The committee, maybe just to launch us into this, the committee would have seen an email from John on behalf of our working group about a route. And so we met again just to connect on some pieces so we can kind of give you the context for it. But I think we're looking at endorsement that we can move this forward and to appreciate next steps, in particular logistics around making this happen. So John, am I going to set you up here? If
Sure.
you want to lead off, Kelly, what do you think? If we lead off from that email and maybe some context setting for the group?
Great. Yeah. So am I allowed to share my screen? Is that permitted through this?
Should be. Try it out, and then if
Yeah,
not, we can get Brandy to give you the permissions.
See if I can do that. Is that working? Maybe it's not.
I can see.
You can see it? Perfect. Great.
Map of Barrie. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, so we're trying to pick, I think, one of the first things we're trying to work on is identify the route. So identify the date and the route. So then we can start getting, other stakeholders and other potential people on board with what we're doing. So this is the first route the first draft of the route that we've done. I think the idea was to try to provide, there's lots of different routes you can do. We're trying to provide an enjoyable route. We're trying to have one that has minimal grade so that everyone can kind of enjoy it. We want to have it that has a couple different, that you have an option to kind of loop back on, if you can't make the whole route, that there's an opportunity to loop back on it. We kind of wanted to go through the downtown core. We wanted to provide it on a variety of paths. So these are kind of the ones that I've identified in that email. So we've gone through a couple of things. I just to kind of go through it here, what we're thinking is start at Memorial Square, come out around, if you can see here, probably have to come through the parking lot to get up to 5 points. And then we're going to come across, we want to try to hit the whole, we're hoping it's going to be open air Dunlop by that point, come all the way across the downtown at the very start of it, where everyone's excited and all together as a group, keep going through Dunlop Street, and then change over to, sorry, is this, sorry, what's that street there? That's, I should know this off the top of my head.
Kempenfeld? Is that
Kempenfeld? That's Kempenfeld, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Kempenfeld Drive. Yeah. So come along, and then we're going to stay along, Kempenfeld Drive, through along Kempenfeld Drive, which is relatively, low traffic volume, and then loop back on the waterfront path that comes all the way back through. Maybe take a dip through Heritage Park and come back in. So we're trying to get it to be around 5 kilometers in length. The benefit of this one is we're not going through, or one of the benefits of this one I thought was, we're not making a lot of left turns at intersections where it's difficult to make that crossover. We're coming through, and we can, even if we get sort of separated through some of the first bit, there's not a lot of intersections to cross as we come further around. So you're coming back down, and it's relatively flat through this section, even probably a little bit downhill as you come, once you get up to Kempenfeld Drive, coming downhill the whole rest of the way around. So it would be, I think there's lots of different options you can have it on, but that was kind of the idea, was that we can, if they keep people together, you're not making a lot of difficult turning movements at intersections. You're running a couple of different routes. You're running through, there will be a section through here where it's not open air, you're on with live traffic. But that section of the route is relatively short because we want, most of all, we want people to have a good time doing it. So that's the I guess the original idea. We'd like to hear feedback on if people have concerns about the approach, or if like a different option for a route. Let us know. So I don't know. I guess Keenan, do you want to? I guess you ask questions. We're happy to answer.
Yeah, as long as you're good with people jumping in now.
Yeah. Let's find out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Laurel, if you want to go ahead, and then Eric Jacoby Hawkins after. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I meant to send you my feedback before today, but I did send you an email this morning, John. I wanted to ride this before I sent my feedback, but I've just been too much of a wimp. So the one thing I did wonder is there's a bit of construction, where that residence large condo building is going up just near the park there. So I'm not sure what what the status of that will be by the time the event goes. That was just more note, I guess. And then my other question was, I was just curious why you decided to go this way instead of, sort of south and west. It's a little bit busier the other way, I guess, but just curious.
Great. Yeah. Sorry. So, so I think, so you're right that Lackhouse development's it's down to a single lane in both directions. We'll have to see what state it's at as we get through there. My thought is that it's relatively short, and we can overtake that full lane for that period. Was my idea, that we could do it through that thing. So definitely good point on that location. There is a tunnel through there, but I wouldn't want people traveling through the tunnel. So I think that's definitely the one spot where there's a bit of a question mark with it for sure. As far as going this direction versus the other direction. So a lot of it is making left turns at big intersections. So if you're coming out and around, you could get down and around through here and back up, but you'd be either completely on off-road trails, which is nice, but you wouldn't. So if you're coming up through here, we've got to come through Bayfield Street or Dunlop Street, and then you've got to get through some left turn intersections probably. And then, other than that one section, you're probably not on a variety of routes. So that was the one reason that we picked this route. But there is other, you could also go further up to the north, but it starts to get a little bit more of a grade as you're coming up in that direction. So if you want to get 5K and you come up in this direction, you hit more difficult intersections, and it's a bit of a grade when you're coming up in that direction. So certainly, I'm not saying this is the right route, but that was the thought process on it. When we talked to the people from Guelph, they were saying it's tough to keep the pack together. So if you've got a lot of intersections to get through, you have to control at each intersection, and it becomes a bit more of a challenge. But yeah, I'm certainly open to different options if we think that this isn't the right direction.
I think that makes sense. The only other thing, as you were chatting there, I was thinking in this in this route, we just have to make sure we identify the areas where people could double back down to the trail if they wanted. If it's kind of, a lot of those places are private property, I think. So we would just have to try to find a connect through to the trail, right?
Yeah, and it's a bit steep in some sections. I think that was another benefit, was that if you have, if you are going to do something shorter, you could do something like a very small route, coming back and around, or you can pick up, there's a cut through sort of here that's got some grade to it. There's another couple cut throughs.
Okay.
But it's a bit steeper. You'd have to walk it through there, but there are options to take a shorter loop if you wanted to, or if you got kind of dragged behind a little bit, you want to just kind of walk your bike down a bit of a steeper slope. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. I think it's good. I mean, you've done the things that some people are certainly scared of, is the biking on the road, and getting it going with a group definitely is a good way to introduce people to that. And that section is so nice. That Kempenfeld Road is it's certainly a nice ride. Okay, I'm done now.
Great. Yeah, no, I think trying to balance the exposing people to riding on the road versus riding on a path versus riding on a trail, and trying to keep the part that we, that's kind of not very enjoyable to be kind of small. So we kind of say, oh, this isn't very nice, but this part's nice. So that's trying to balance that out was the idea.
Awesome. Okay, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I think starting by riding down the stairs at Meridian Place is a very daring choice.
So
there's a little bit of how much I can control where this line goes. But
no, I understand how the maps go. That's all right. But actually, my question is just if you could remind me, what is the time of the ride? Is it like sort of departure time and completion time, and then what day of the year are we looking at?
So 5K. I guess we'll have to talk. We can talk to the people at Guelph again to find out how long that took them to run. That was kind of, we got the distance from them. I don't know exactly how long that's going to take us off the top of my head. We can look into that. But yeah, the idea was that it's going to start twilight. They start kind of assembling it, or the way they did it was they started assembling at twilight and ran the route once it got dark and came back. So part of the reason why we picked it in September. And so I guess Anne Marie and Kelly can just let me know, it's September 17th and a rain date of 24th is what we're thinking. So it allows it, it's a bit darker earlier in the night then, so you don't have to be quite as late. It's after school starts, but not right after school starts. So that was the idea behind the timing.
All right. So then as a follow-up, if it's all running basically in darkness, I know I think it's a provincial regulations. If you're going at night, you have to have the reflectors at the rear and a light at the front, and not everyone has that, obviously. So I know, though, then sometimes we've given out those little clip-on LEDs that go on the front. So I just want to see, are we going to have a big supply of those that we can give them to everybody going out, so that everyone has that front light? And I don't know if we get little red backlights to go with them or something like that.
I think that's great. I mean, I think the idea is to be so lit up that there's no chance anyone could not see us. But yeah, let's make sure we've got for sure the regulated requirements on there. Yeah.
I made a note about that just in our file. Thank you, Eric. And I'm not sure if we want to, I don't know if this fits, but around where we can look at this event going forward, from sponsorships to individuals decorating their bikes with some of those night lights that we saw Guelph leverage beautifully. And if there's a grant, we would actually tap into or try and look at for this. And there's been some other pieces, I think, on that front. I'm not sure if it actually aligns, but it'd be great to look at making sure we can have everyone ready to go, and no last minute surprises for people that don't have their bike kitted out appropriately.
Saw Kelly's hand there as well.
Yeah. So yeah, and to Anne Marie's point, and to your question too, Eric, the intention is to completely light up the bikes with LEDs, and we don't want to leave anybody out. So making sure that we have those things available for folks that may or may not be able to afford them, and also looking at opportunities for bicycles as well. To have that opportunity to give the folks that don't have access to those we really want it to be all encompassing. So we're excited, to bring this forward, to engage our community, to begin our education piece on. We need to get people on bicycles. This is what it feels like at night. Isn't this fun? You're riding on the road. So the whole intention of it is engagement and getting people active, and including families and so it's, yes, absolutely. Well, we've got the active transportation grant was just released from the feds last week. So they're doing projects as well as capital projects. So we could potentially apply for individual project base for this event, which I think would be great, and or a grant application for the specific subcommittee that is doing the education piece. So I think those are all opportunities, and these are really great points. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I know we've got questions, but I'm hoping I can just also lead in for context. Some of the things we've also discussed, if it's helpful, is how do we use Bike Week in June to get some momentum towards this? It could be everything from biking this route to getting people familiar, having some purposeful engagement around this, giving out or looking at access to some safety lights and whatnot for those that show up, for maybe any type of pop-up we could do around safety on your bike and kind of remember how to do this, perhaps something around Bike Week, but also maybe something leading into back to school in early September. So two maybe points of time that can support awareness and education around bike safety, but also the event.
That's great. I just want to make sure, Eric, you had your questions answered. If you had any follow-up, or
yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're fairly inexpensive. Like I've received at some kind of event it's basically just like a little rubber bracelet that stretches around the front bars of your bike and has a click-on LED. So I'm sure it's not very expensive. So we could probably get a few hundred of those or something to give out over the season. And make sure everyone has one. I know that the route itself would be light enough that day, but it would be a bad example to say, well, a special event, we won't worry about it. So I think if we have enough to kit out everybody who needs them, I know they don't come as standard equipment, especially not on children's bikes. So it's really nice if you can say this is, even if you had a pamphlet, maybe it'd say here are the rules and tips for riding a bike at night, and have that go out with the little clip-on light.
Mm-hmm. Good points, Eric. All right, so I see a couple hands. I saw Brett's hand first, then Andy, then Wilf. Go ahead, Brett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to mention on the point of the lights. I'm going to check City Hall. We may have those lights exactly what Eric's referring to. We bought those in bulk. So let me have a look at City Hall, and I'll have that information. I can send an email back to Councillor Kugel just to let her know what I find. But we did have quite a few boxes of those, so I will look for that.
Great, Brett. And let me know if there's anything that we need to motion or ask for formally to acquire those for the committee event, or if that's something that can just go through staff.
Yeah, I'll let you know. And if we need to do a motion, I'll also find out if we don't have those, what the cost was to order those. And I don't believe it was a huge amount, but it'd be some dollars for sure. So okay. I'll look into that for sure.
Well, and I'd be happy, since this is happening in Ward 2, I have room in my councillor budget. I'd be happy to provide some of my office budget for that, for sure. Okay, thank you for that, Brett. Andy, go ahead, and then Wolf after.
Okay, so I know that ahead of me, there's been a bunch of discussion about the lights. So I just wanted a little caution. Now, if you already have them, that's a whole different thing. But if you have not got them, in my experience, most of the stuff that comes from promotional companies that are selling promo stuff is very poor quality. And I think it sends a really bad message for our committee to be giving away stuff that people don't want, don't need. So make sure that we're not just handing them out to everyone, but only those who actually would use them. And then again, maybe a little focus, if we have to purchase them, they're not already purchased, make sure that we get something that's actually quality. Quality. And then just I'll put in here as well that I know that we don't have somebody from Firebird on this call or this committee, but I will make sure that most of this information is relayed to them, because again, my husband sits on this committee and I Firebird, and I end up in those meetings as well. So that's it.
we're happy to have that connection, Andy. It's awesome. And good point regarding the quality. We are the sustainability committee too, so I guess we should probably think about that. Wilf, go ahead.
Good morning, Keenan and everybody. I think this is going to be the most well-lit event ever. We're spending a lot of time on lighting, so I'll just pipe in on lighting. If Brett doesn't find anything at the city, I've been at events where Hydro One has handed out exactly that type of thing. We might explore just looking to somebody like Electra, who's got an interest, obviously, in electricity, and lighting is related, so they may have an interest in providing this for us.
Great suggestion, Wolf. John, I saw you were unmuted there. Did you have something to add earlier?
Sorry, yeah. We did reach out to Firebird, but yeah, that's great from Andy. That she's obviously got the better connection. But yeah, they said they were on board with it. But yeah, that's great. There.
Okay, awesome. I did have similar feedback to Laurel on the route, like in terms of going along the South Shore. My thinking was visibility to all the people in the condo buildings. Like, it'd be a pretty cool sight from up above, but I totally understand the reasons you said as well. So I'm cool with whatever route, but I had similar thoughts to Laurel, so I wanted to put that out there. Kelly, did you want to jump in on anything here, or? Oh, you're
yeah, thank you. Those are great. I'd also like to put out if anybody else wants to join the subcommittee with us. So far we have John and Anne Marie and I.
I'd like to help out if I can, Kelly.
Great, Laura. We'll put you on our email list. Thank you so much. That's great. Yeah, partners are great. I spoke with the BIA, and they're right on board with this. They will definitely have an open air Dunlop both of those days on September 17th and the 24th. So they're on board. And please note also that we also have another member of the committee from Tourism Barrie, the new sport tourism. Oh my gosh, Stephen, I believe. Is it Stephen, Anne Marie?
I believe so. I'm agreeing with you, Kelly. I believe so, yeah.
You're so funny. Yes, okay, good. So yes, partners are yes, and definitely Firebird, and I want to reach out to Laurel at the Barrie Public Library. There's so many different partners that can support and help promote and support this event. It would be awfully nice also, I agree, Keenan, to kind of pedal down that way too. But I think our intention and if what the committee talked about was to promote cycling on the street and to get people, familiar with that feeling and what that's like and how we can build confidence, but also get support for dedicated and separated bike lanes. So I think that those all come together. I think this is a great event. It's going to be spectacular, and I really appreciate the support, and I think we can. And I guess if we have a moment to talk about the grant applications for the active transportation feds, I'm not sure who we would do that with for some items. A tent. BIA also suggested that we're welcome every Saturday to go and put up our tent and talk about active transportation and or the Bike the Night event as well, along with Bike Week. So there's a lot of opportunity. So yes, it would be nice to to perhaps get some funding somehow for that. So maybe Brett has more info on how we go about doing that. I don't know. Thank you.
Anne Marie, see you're in there. Go ahead.
Maybe building on those pieces, if I may, Kelly, without I think it's in alignment. I don't want to take away from the questions that you have. And if I'm not sure if Brett has an answer, but would we as a committee then, because we're talking about an event that has impact logistics, be it access to the road, maybe impact to police, I'm not sure if we need permits. Do we need a motion from this committee to council that looks at multiple things that maybe touches on your comments, Kelly? One is endorsement of the event, so we can get some support with some of those logistics, as well as perhaps within that motion, city resources to support us in applying for that grant tied to this event if it's city endorsed. And then from there, putting any type of budget ask or resource ask with it. So should we not be successful with the grant, but if there is anything that Brett's able to come back with around resources that kind of align with the comments around appropriate lighting and other pieces, we can actually proceed with some staff support. Would we typically, for an event like this, to have it city endorsed, move it to city building or to general committee for discussion?
It's a good question. I don't know if Brett, you have any insight on that piece at all?
I turned my camera on too quickly on that comment.
Thanks.
I was just going to note on the grant side, we're digging into that. Should have some information in the next 2 weeks I can share with you folks as far as what's eligible, what's in and out, and what we're thinking of, and maybe there's opportunity for multiple applications. So staff are looking at that right now. So hopefully, if I get that sooner than the next meeting, I can just send a quick email blast so you folks can digest that. If not, I'll have more information at the next meeting. So,
do you want me to connect in with the city clerk at all? Like, so, like, would we even motion to say that this committee endorses a Bike the Night event, and perhaps we can make a presentation to city building if needed, with broader conversation around resourcing and compliments to other pieces we've been involved in. So one beautiful piece that aligns also is the city of Barrie, I believe, had some involvement as a support, but the health unit, I know Sarah's away today, but we met between John, Kelly, myself with Christine Bushy, and Sarah on behalf of the health unit to also appreciate the work that they're doing around the On the Move with 4 of our city of 4 Barrie schools. So we'll continue to look at making sure there's some branding and marketing alignment with the On the Move pieces with this, but would be great to make sure that we can formalize our movement forward and then access resources that we need for this.
Mm-hmm. So, Anne-Marie, do you think it would work if we prepare for to pass a motion at the March meeting? We can work out that wording. Is that soon enough for you guys if we can formally pass a motion then, or do you want to try to couple something together right now?
I think if as long as it's captured in the notes, I can even look at putting a motion at city building.
At city building. Okay. We have options. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just wondering about bringing the rest of council on board with this for those that might not be seeing the conversation we're having. I know Eric's got his hand up too. If there's anything.
Eric, did you have any thoughts on that piece or another piece?
No, it was just a really quick suggestion on the Bike the Night. If the city has any all-season lighting in parks or on the building or on the arch that we could tie in and ask them to light up and make them dance or whatever they can do with them. It would be kind of cool to tie that into that event. Just a suggestion.
Love that. Yeah, Meridian Place, the pink building at Meridian has
lots with the lighting downtown in the winter too. Yeah. Do you want me to? I think even a motion that's even a quick one, just for the minutes. I could just say if the committee likes the direction, so we know as a subgroup, we can continue forward and put this as a standing item, and then kind of know that our energy is going through something that we can formalize. Could I table a motion that the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee endorses a Bike the Night event for September 2022?
For sure.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, that's great. Any discussion on that piece? Not seeing any. Okay, all in favor?
Such an easygoing group.
And opposed? None. Awesome. I think none. Yeah. Okay, we're good.
Good. Okay, I'll reach out to Claire. So Keenan and I are on city building. Claire is the chair. I'll reach out and see if we can make the agenda in time, just to give some context and see if staff have any comment or can help with any guidance before this goes to council.
Yeah, I think if we're passing a motion at today's meeting, it'll go to the next city building.
Should catch the minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Any other? Just John, did you have more on this piece?
Sorry, no. On the Bike the Night, I think it's great going to council. The only other group or groups that I think we kind of talked about bringing in that are critical, but it sort of ties into the funding part of it, is talking to getting someone from BIPOC, Indigenous, and LGBTQ communities. But we will need, I think we'll need to pay them for their services to consult on this, which is a little bit different than I think than some of the other stuff, but we'll need some funding for that. So I think the earlier we can get that in, the better. So yeah, so I guess that's once Brett gets back to us on what that funding can be directed towards, then we can find out what other funding we need to raise to get started. But it'd be good to have that stuff on early. And then, sorry, I guess the only other thing on this, I guess, is if anyone else has any connections or wants to bring anyone in, by all means, if you think you've got, I think the other one we thought it was Simcoe Cycles, that they'd be interested in it, maybe from a tourism type thing. I don't know if Brendan Mathis is still the lead on that, but yeah, if anyone's got any connections, then by all means, bring them in.
Bring it up at BCC board meeting this week. The Barrie Cycling Club.
Awesome.
That's great. Can we leave this as a standing item for ongoing meetings?
100%.
To keep everyone updated and then just see how this evolves over time?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, are we good on the bike the night item for now then? Everyone good? Not seeing anything else. Perfect. So the next thing we have on the agenda is the Bradford Street cross section. So I'm not sure how we're going about this conversation here. Brett, if you had some introductory comments, and then I see Hannah's hand is up.
Yeah, just based on the discussions last time, I believe we wanted to just talk about where we're at in the EA, just an update after the PIC we had on Thursday, and just talk about any kind of updates or feedback we've received to date. And if you folks had any other additional thoughts. So we had our Public Information Center on Thursday, as I said, we had about 40 attendees. Good discussion, good feedback. Themes we've heard up to the PIC and at the PIC included the desire to make sure that the streetscape is an urban streetscape reflective of kind of a downtown area. So definitely not looking to see a suburban type streetscape, which that's aligns with the OP and what our thoughts are. So that's great. We've received feedback on looking at a 2-lane option. So we've actually restructured the study. We're taking additional time to look at that and introducing a third PIC. The kind of additional PIC will be this spring, likely May, June timeframe, which will present the results of the planning alternatives. So that's the high level alternatives to get us through to the point where we can start looking at design alternatives. We heard themes around desire for better cycling infrastructure. Tied to the 2-lane option was just the general theme about reducing greenhouse gases. One thing I touched on was, although this is just a study about Bradford Street, I can take back if I hear themes, but even the transportation team feels kind of shares some of the same thought process that while we will assess that and see where that kind of alternative lands as far as that evaluation, really kind of deconstructing that desire is really reflecting the climate change emergency, the desire to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So just in the same transportation lens, I did make the suggestion that really with the federal government ban on internal combustion engine vehicles by 2035, that I think through our study, we will have the opportunity just to flag to council that we should be looking at moving forward with EV ready requirements within our residential buildings. But folks, I was going to mention too, that doesn't mean that couldn't be something it's brought forward a little bit sooner through this committee, because my study won't be going to council until Q1 2023. So there's a bit of time there. But it was just really kind of leveraging that energy and that synergy from kind of the feedback from the public and channeling that into a way that kind of is tied to transportation, but also tied to what's happening on the Bradford Street corridor with redevelopment. So that was one element that came out of that. We see a lot of benefits with that. And I think that is kind of the gist of it at this time. I think that the biggest piece of new information you folks would have seen were the roundabouts at the south end. And we tried to touch on in the presentation and the presentation material that we're very carefully weighing the alternatives between a conventional intersection and a roundabout. The whole impetus of the study was really to look at that intersection pair. They don't operate great today. They're actually, the queues are quite long on Lakeshore Drive pre-COVID times. So we wanted to just understand what footprint requirements we would have so we can protect that from development in the future. And that was really the primary role of this study. So when you hear us talking about like it's a long range study, we're not really planning at this point to do any capital works. It's really around that initial impetus for this project. So and why I'm saying all this, roundabouts, they get more complex the more lanes they have and more difficult for pedestrians and cyclists. So a single lane roundabout is relatively easy to navigate. When we get into the multi-lane roundabouts, there are solutions, but it's definitely a lot more difficult for folks, especially with those with accessibility issues. Roundabouts lack the audible cues that the flashing signal heads have at conventional intersections. So we're just really carefully looking at that. And it's really again, hitting back on that original point of the study and the impetus was answering that question definitively. Realistically, is there anything we can do here that makes sense? There's always been that question about roundabouts. So it's really just understanding that and either accepting the fact that really a conventional solution is the best way to go, or maybe we protect for something that we consider 10, 20 years from now. So that's the Coles notes on that project. So yeah, I'll open the floor up to questions.
That's great. Thanks, Brett. Hannah, go ahead. If you have thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Brett, for looking into roundabouts and the 2-lane option on Bradford Street. Just a few notes on the PSC slides. I found that the direction was a little bit unclear. On some slides, we say we really want a vibrant community downtown, but also the 5-lane cross section is really not compatible with vibrant communities. And I think it would have to be when we're deciding between 5-lane, heavy traffic, high speed car, lots of cars versus a walkable, vibrant community. Those are completely different things. So it has to be very clear which option is the vibrant option and which option is the highway option. And especially if we're considering like those intersections, roundabouts, and if they're going to be 5 lanes, it's going to be very challenging to have those intersections safe for pedestrians and cyclists. It will be very hostile for cyclists if we build another Mapleview or Bayfield or anything. Really, the only vibrant street we have in Barrie is Dunlop, and that's because it's not 5 lanes wide. So that's just something that I think PIC slides were missing. I think the wording was very biased towards the 5-lane cross section. I found it's the wording was very positive, flexible, transit, good for transit. Although I think it's just best to reword the options to make sure it's very clear which one is actually better for safety, better for transit, and better for vibrant communities. Just something that I think is very important to be transparent about the options. One question though, on slide 19, it indicates that there is like the traffic circles, there's the green, the red, the level of service. The actual Bradford cross section in 2050 shows us green. So why are we saving the 34-meter right away and expanding if the operations are green?
So we're maintaining the same number of travel lanes. That's the critical point. And the widening really is associated with the 2-way left turn lane, which is being triggered now, even without the conversation around the EA. So we're seeing with these new developments, the amount of traffic that's concentrated to a point source is triggering the warrants for the 2-way left turn lane to provide that safe access in and out of the building. So that's part of it. The other aspect is the widening is really about the boulevards for that high quality space for the streetscape. Right now, there's literally probably a 1.5 meter boulevard. So that's basically from back of curb to the property line. And that's where we've jammed in a sidewalk. So like from a multimodal level of service standpoint, that would be kind of the low end. That's not something we would design for, but that road's been there for quite some time. That was accommodated within that corridor. So we're looking to triple the boulevard space, if not more. So we can go from a 1.5 meter sidewalk to a 2 meter sidewalk, move that well away from the roadway to achieve those higher multimodal level of service targets, and then introduce, again, you're looking at roughly 1.6 to 1.8 for the cycle track. So that's again, like almost doubling plus that width. Plus, even if we have them side by side, we need a bit of separation for accessibility needs. If you go by the guidelines, it's 0.6, but there's some wiggle room to make some adjustments based on what other municipalities have done. Then we need to accommodate the utilities. And one thing we're asking or investigating is whether there's any option for that high voltage power line to be buried. But from everything we've heard to date, that's likely not feasible. So that's quite a barrier as well on that project as well. So yeah, no, I did notice the green was likely a little bit overly optimistic for 2051. And that's one thing I wanted to circle back on, just exactly what that the data was based on, and just having a look at that level of service. But the 2 lanes, absent birch direction, absent of the intersections, can handle it. But really, kind of with any transportation planning issue, it's the intersections that kill the performance of the road, not necessarily the road itself. So
right.
no,
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for answering that question. I think in summary, I just wish that people were more transparent, showing that as opposed to using the negative wording of reduce travel lanes and making the corridor more flexible, I wish we use something like it's going to be making it actually more walkable, more vibrant, more financially sustainable, better for transit and safety for health of the residents. And will actually improve traffic, because if we keep expanding roads, we'll attract more vehicles to it and then eventually going to be clogged up in another 50 years. So really, there's not a very sustainable way to fix traffic. Because of induced demand. If we actually narrow the roads and make it difficult for cars to drive, only people whose destination is on the street will drive there. Well, we have a highway, after all, 400 series highway going through the middle of the city. We don't need to attract vehicles to our downtown location just to pass through. And actually, I hope the next PIC will reflect that a bit more clearly. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. John, and then Kelly after.
Thanks, and thanks, Brett. Yeah, it's a good public meeting. I think it was good hearing all there's a lot of concern, or I guess a lot of comments about active transportation, which was great to hear in that public meeting. I guess a couple of things that I was picked up on was, going from, just to be clear, going from a 4-lane road to a 5-lane road. I mean, I personally see that as adding capacity, because you're adding, if you have a busy 4-lane road with a lot of mid-block intersections, that the second lane becomes a de facto left turn lane and decrease the capacity down to a single lane in each direction. So I think that's where we get into those road diets where a 3-lane road and a 4-lane road has a similar capacity. So then if you're going to 5-lane road, you are adding capacity, in my opinion. But on the other side of things, I'm worried about also pushing that traffic to other places. Pushing, if that traffic gets restricted there, I don't want it being pushed onto Lakeshore as well. So I'm also concerned about that, increasing traffic there. If anything, I would like Lakeshore to be to have less traffic on it and to become more pedestrian friendly, and possibly not even be a vehicle route through there. So yeah, those are just my 2 comments, was the capacity of a 5-lane versus a 4-lane versus a 3-lane, and which one you consider to be keeping the same capacity, and then also trying to avoid pushing that traffic onto other adjacent roads. So I'm looking forward to see what the results are, but certainly looking at those items.
No, thanks for that, John. And we'll have them put together a bit of a discussion paper on the 2-lane as part of kind of the next steps with the consultant. We're just developing the scope for that exercise. Yeah, great question about the 5 and the 4 and the addition of the 2A. I think the goal is to maintain a reasonable level of service. We'll see, if we didn't do the 2A, we would see a drop in level of service with the increase in growth, especially just locally, but then just in general across the city. So that's kind of how we see it. And just about if you're pushing traffic away from Bradford Street. So there's a lot of history about the network and how it was planned, dating back to 1999. So there was an initial waterfront downtown transportation study, which set the framework for all of the transportation network in the downtown. That dealt with the realignment of Lakeshore, that dealt with Simcoe Street, the connection of Marion Maple to Simcoe, the elimination of Chase McCracken Way, that really kind of set the framework. And that actual initial study really, it identified the number of lanes needed between Highway 400 and Lakeshore, and that did consider, should Lakeshore be 4 lanes, should Bradford not widen, should Ann not widen, and the recommended solution back then, and that was planning for a population of 160,000 by 21. The recommendation was keep Lakeshore at 2 because of the reasons you noted, John. Bradford at 5, Innisfil at 3, and at 5 to get that capacity in place. And now we're at, so that went through 1999 was a master plan type exercise. 2002, there was an EA that was both endorsed by council. That flowed into Lakeshore being constructed as it is today. We've subsequently had our 2014 TMP that reconfirmed those recommendations, our 2019 TMP, which also, and then we're going to be getting into our new TMP, which will look to 2051, but we'll be looking at basically capping widening based on 41, that any population growth after 41 will have to be accommodated through AT or transit. So there's a lot of history to just how that network was made and how decisions were made, and kind of really, it was that decision initially that Lakeshore was meant to be that lower speed road, and the desire was to push the traffic to your Innisfil would be kind of the least desired, but really the Ann and the Bradford Street corridor. So that's what we'll all touch on through that discussion paper, and also the evaluation, and just make that really clear. And again, looking at it objectively, is there, what would happen if we do 2 lanes? What are the delays? What will that cause? Because it's a broader mobility issue within the city. We're accommodating as well. Just recognizing, again, Kempenfelt Bay intersecting that grid network, it really focuses everybody into a little funnel between Highway 400 and the Bay. So, and then so leave it at that. But yeah, lots of interesting discussion. It's interesting feedback on this project. So for sure, appreciate that.
Right. Kelly, you're up.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, I appreciated the event as well. So thank you. I appreciate that. Adding the 2-lane option as a part of the project planning as well. My question is always around data and metrics, and how do you plan when, I understand population growth, and how does the vehicle and population growth align with each other? If, through our 2 years plus going into the pandemic, with more people working at home and vehicle use, and the impacts of people owning less vehicles and choosing more multimodal transportations and not having a car at all, how does that feature into transportation planning when we're building roads 20, 30, 40 years down? How do we account for truly less vehicles and that kind of falling off, and building bigger roads for cars that we're not going to have that many of? Is there some kind of calculation or metrics that you use?
Yeah, so I'll try not to bore you, and I'll try and keep it as short as possible. But really what we do, like as part of the OP updates, is kind of the starting point. And as part of the OP update, there's a municipal comprehensive review, but also we look at population employment forecasts that we're basing our OP on. So we're working right now to 51, so that this info will be funneled into the master plan updates. But what we do is we work with a consultant, economist consultant that's also a planning consultant, that's experts in understanding the market. What are people looking to move into? What will the market accept in terms of built form, elevation? How does that align with provincial policies? So the city is broken up into small geographical units, and we allocate population based on all these little units where we think we can get infill, where we see development potential. And we do the math through these little units to see, like, basically hit our target of our 298,000. So once we have that goes into our travel demand model, that is a macro model, and we can understand based on data from the MTO. It's called the Transportation Tomorrow Survey. It's mailed out to roughly 5% of the population. So I've only received it once in my lifetime. I'm not sure if any of you folks have seen that, But that's that detailed survey that asks information about how many trips you make a day and where you make your trips. And I'm not sure if, yeah, any of folks had that, but that information is used to develop a database that is the basis of how we do our transportation master plan, so that they mail them out strategically to get a statistically significant sample so we can understand the origin and destinations of people that live in those individual zones. So that's how we can understand where people are making our trips. And then we can assign those trips to the roadways to then understand what kind of traffic we'll get on those individual roadways, which then flows into decisions regarding how many lanes of traffic we need. Now, as far as, yeah, vehicle ownership, modal split like that, we take the population and we apply factors to that based on our modal split assumptions, based on how many people will be taking walking, cycling, or active transportation, and then reduce those trips down. What we will be looking at, and typically we've done that globally across the board, but what we'll be looking at as part of our next master plan is doing that geographically, based on those small geographic units, because they are a lot of potential to get a lot better modal splits in the urban growth center and along the intensification corridors. And it's really tough to get a lot of growth in the mode split in the traditional suburban areas. So we really want to hit on those areas to see how that changes. And hopefully that will kind of a more fine tooth approach to looking at that will also help really support that elimination of kind of a widening scenario going on beyond 41, that we're really just allocating our population primarily in the UGC, in the intensification corridors. That should really let us move forward with a kind of a build out scenario within the build boundary. And really at this point, we're at basically a build out scenario in the secondary plan areas as well, like considering what we've assumed for 41. So hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like that data. Thank you very much, Brett. So I appreciate that. And I think part of our job as a city is to, as a collaborative a collaborative work is how we promote active transportation as, as in an adjunct to multimodal transportation. So that'll help you and help us, get folks using their multimodal transportations and walking, so we don't have to build as many roads and we won't have as many cars. So I think we need to, as a city, to take a larger role in our education piece, and I'm hoping through maybe active transportation at subcommittee education somehow we can help you do that.
We on a related note, the Cycle Barrier Infrastructure Program Public Information Center #1 is scheduled for February 24th. And I'll be getting that advertisement out to you folks shortly. So that's the type of feedback too, that we can bring back to council as well, just the desire to move faster with broader capital projects, understanding what we're doing with that individual project, but just if we keep hearing those themes, that's helpful. We can just communicate that and look at more aggressive approaches to hitting those intensification corridors. It's it's all helpful, and it's all quite interesting how interrelated everything is.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Brett. Hannah's hand was up first, then Laurel, then Wilf.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. Just 2 follow-up points. One is that if we are looking at how people move right now at the surveys, people drive because that's the easiest way. And if we keep expanding roads and making driving the best option, they will keep driving. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So people drive now, we keep expanding roads, then they keep driving. So we will never really be able to achieve our modal target. But if we make other modes more attractive, people will switch modes. So there is so much evidence, like Toronto, they did that on King Street. People, they restricted car movements, but it didn't actually get more cars on parallel corridors because people switched modes. The streetcar became more attractive to them. So there's just so much evidence that if we keep expanding roads, that we're not going to reach our target modal splits. And another point is that if we know we can't expand roads forever because there's just not enough space to accommodate the growth of the city forever, and we're going to cap it at 2041, why not look at capping it now? Because that's just a good opportunity, it seems, right? So thank you for looking into the option. So is it a 2-lane with a left turning lane? So 3-lane cross section in total?
Yeah, we'll be looking at that with the consultant, how they want to model that to to achieve what kind of we hear from the feedback. So not exactly sure what they'll be modeling at this point, but yeah, minimum 2 lanes, and then we'll just decide whether the 2-way left turn lane is something we want, or it's some kind of consistent with the potential 5-lane option. Maybe it's strategic lefts with medians throughout for landscaping. So we'll have to look into that, and we'll have that information for the next PIC for sure.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, an awesome point. We want to change people's behavior. That's our goal here. Laurel, go ahead.
I think my original question isn't a question anymore. Kelly's question kind of answered it, but I guess the thought I had, which is kind of out of the scope of this group, is the transportation to the businesses that are going to be servicing the residents in these downtown or more urban areas. Does the city model those deliveries, collection vehicles and everything coming out of the Bayfield and Dunlop Street corridors, or is that kind of out of the scope of what you're looking at? Like, I'm thinking, you know, if we're envisioning a coffee shop in the base of the condo building, are there deliveries presumably coming along Bradford Street, or does the city consider that Dunlop? And I think the regional model you talked about makes a lot of sense to me, like how you're looking at more localized assessments.
Help me understand that a little bit better. I'm not quite.
So I'm just wondering about, you know, like we're talking about commuters and cars and getting people out of their cars, but there's a whole nother aspect to this, which is the deliveries that you know, like a restaurant needs to have their food come in from somewhere, and their recycling picked up and whatever else. Like, are those in your model or your assessment, are those transportation, larger vehicles envisioned to come on Bradford Street along with the residential traffic? Because
yeah, so typically it depends on the development. So typically, sometimes those are accommodated internally, but you raise a great point with the revised built form. What is that going to look like? Will that be easy? Will there be accessible side streets, right? Like if someone's pulled over on lane 2, say on a 5-lane or a 4-lane cross section, or a 3, how does that affect things? So no, that's actually interesting feedback that we haven't heard before, and that's yeah, no, that's actually that's good. We're going to take that back to the study because that's important, and it's kind of a product too of, I know in the OP there's a plan or a desire to do more formal secondary planning in this area, and that might be a recommendation that comes out of my study just to help kind of reinforce that and hopefully move forward with that, just to provide a little more firm guidance on how development should look in some specific considerations, not to be overly prescriptive, but just to better set the framework in some of those boundary conditions. So that's yeah, that's a great question, and we'll take that back.
And it just kind of, I guess, changes the feel of a street if the large transportation, like transport trucks and stuff, are coming down there as their primary mode to get, for example, to the downtown businesses. If that's what the city is envisioning Bradford Street as doing. I mean, it's hard to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because you do see it, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out practically, and that's something we'll take back. I don't typically they're off hours. You see the deliveries of the smaller like Cisco type food service trucks, but it's yeah, no, that's a really valid question, and we'll take that back for sure.
Great, thanks, Laurel. Wolf, go ahead.
Thank you, Keenan. What a fascinating conversation. I love this. So a couple of thoughts here, which I think tie into just considerations around how we shift modes into active transportation, but also just Brett, around planning, and one question for you, whether this is something that's on the table, and so I will tie this all together in the next 60 seconds, promise, and whether there's merit in pursuing this conversation in a little bit more depth beyond the scope of what we have at this meeting. So I'll just start. Obviously my interest is in electrification and getting us off greenhouse gases, and Brett, as you pointed out, we're targeting in the next a little over 10 years that there will be no more gas or diesel vehicles sold in this country. Other countries are ahead of us and are going to do so in less than 8 years. And I would say pretty confidently that if I had made that statement in as little as 2 or 3 years ago, to say we won't be selling any more gas vehicles within a decade, you probably would have laughed me out of the room and said he's off his rocker. That's never going to happen. And here it is. And I'll tell you today that I think it's going to happen quicker than we realize even today. So it's a disruptive technology. It follows an S curve. The path we're on is not completely new. We've seen this before with other technologies. And bringing this sort of together to what we're talking about today, the parallel technology that is evolving with electrified transportation is autonomous transportation. And again, this is where you can laugh me out of the room today, and we'll have it on the minutes, and we'll talk about it again next year and see how close I was. Like, this is happening now. General Motors is doing this. Ford is doing this. Every car manufacturer has cars on the road that are fully capable of self-driving, and are moving very quickly beyond pilot cars. Like, these are cars that you can buy today that have early forms of self-driving, and there are some driverless versions of these cars that are not just self-driving, but there is no steering wheel. You get into it, you tell it where you're going. So where I'm going with this is the I think pretty much accepted is that the future of transportation is not vehicle ownership. That the Uber model, but driverless, that is just at your door, takes you to where you want to go and drops you off, is not far away. It is definitely running in parallel to the timelines we're talking about here of electric car adoption. And as we move away from the ownership model, there's a couple of important things that happen. I think there's a natural shift to people that moving to other forms of transportation. So it actually complements active transportation really well when I think somebody here, Kelly, you were talking about, or Kelly or Laurel, somebody was talking about the Queen Street examples of, like, people do shift to other transportation as the model changes and when they don't own cars. But the other thing that I wonder, Brett, whether we're considering is that as we have this strong shift to autonomous transportation away from an ownership model, the need for parking disappears. Cars drop people off. They don't have to park somewhere while somebody's eating or shopping. So as we're looking at just laneways and traffic flow and so on, part of what you're presumably contemplating is people come into the city, they park their car somewhere, the car takes up space for huge amounts of time when the car isn't actually moving. They do their thing and then they get back in the car. I'm just I want to throw out just the concept that will change, and that is already changing. And so there's just a couple of thoughts, and not necessarily completely cohesive, but things for us to consider around the natural shift to active transportation as we move away from the ownership model, and the change just in planning around needs for parking and even deliveries and things like that come and go a little more fluidly than they do today. That's my random set of events. I look forward to you taking me up on this in a year, Keenan, to see how we're doing on autonomous and whether it really was crazy in 2022.
Yeah, who's placing their bets? Very interesting points there, Wolf. Thank you. Okay, Hannah, I saw your hand fly up there. Got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting how there's going to be autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles solve so many problems like air pollution and a little bit less noise, and also Yeah, but they still don't solve the geographical problem. If people still choose personal vehicles, our streets are still going to be clogged up because they're just not an efficient way of moving people. I agree that people will not own cars, so that will help them choose different modes. Because if you don't own a car, you're much more likely to hop on a bus or hop on a bike, which will really, but we still shouldn't think that will solve traffic issues because still, if our city keeps growing, we won't be able to accommodate everyone to drive to their destination. And the best way to do that is to create pleasant, vibrant spaces so people wouldn't even want to. Not that they can't, but so they choose not to. Yeah, that was just my point. Thank you.
All right. Cognizant of the fact that we're at 11:10 and we're on a bit of a tangent, but Wilf, did you have some final thoughts on that? Sorry, I ran fly up again, but then just went down, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just, you're absolutely right, Hannah. I would say, like, we just need to be aware of this to make sure that we promote people towards active transportation as that shift happens. That, I think that's the thing. And I guess one other point, as we move to electrification, it solves the air pollution issue. It doesn't necessarily solve the congestion issue, and that's why this committee and what we're talking about is really important. Just be aware that this is happening. But I would add that the one thing that is almost certain is that the concept of moving large vehicles like buses around in the future is not going to exist. It's not cost effective. Public transit will look a lot different. It will not be people taking buses. That's for certain. Again, an opportunity for us to embrace, to say, what are the alternate modes you have other than hailing the autonomous vehicle? Let's encourage this. It's just raising the awareness that this is happening, and let's be ahead of the curve as we encourage people to look at alternate modes of transportation. Thank you for your indulgence, Keelan.
No, of course, it's interesting stuff. Okay, on the Bradford Street cross section, any other final thoughts or questions on that piece? Anne-Marie.
Just a quick question for Brett, more administrative. I unfortunately had a conflict and couldn't make it, but I'm not seeing it on the city YouTube. Was it recorded?
It is recorded, and I need to get that uploaded. Just getting to that. So it is recorded. It will be uploaded hopefully by the end of the week.
Brilliant. And then next step, because I know we talked about kind of keeping this up front and center on our agenda. Would we rest this for a bit, or when's the next kind of movement on consultation that we want to be staying aware of as a committee?
Well, I don't think we really need to touch on it too much in March, and I'll just pop in quickly to just to give an update if there's much to talk about in April, but likely once we get into that May-June timeframe, we'll be reaching out to you folks again, and I wouldn't be surprised if I'm back with a bit of a presentation on either of those 2 dates. So, and just for my understanding, when does this committee wrap up, just so I don't miss an opportunity?
It's about November.
November, so okay.
Keenan, is that right? I believe so. November is kind of the closing off, and then we get into the next terms function, I think.
Okay. Well, either way, yeah. So I am cognizant of that, and not that, but the presentation piece. So I would like to get back with SEMA in that, the May-June before the PIC anyway. So
okay, no thanks. And I'm pretty confident with that because I believe when we talk about terms of members, it is till November 2022.
Right, because the new council sworn in like December 1st or 2nd or something like that. Yeah. Okay. All right, that's great. Thanks, Brett. Thank you so much for all that info. Okay, so next was the Crompton Park update, but we're going to defer that to another meeting. So City of Pickering city building conversation. I'm having a hard time recalling what this piece was. Who was that? You, Anne-Marie, that put this on the agenda?
I don't believe so. Not that I'm recalling, but we can take that away. I'm not sure if Brandy knows.
Yeah.
The next meeting, if no one's jumping on it.
Yeah, no one's jumping on it. So
it was with respect to the waste collection calendar and stuff being put in there. That's what I have in my notes.
Item, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's the next item, circular economy waste collection calendar.
Oh, the city of
Well-
Barrie, sorry, I jumped one, the Pickering one, that was just asked to be put on, I can't remember. And it was deferred over from a previous meeting.
Oh, okay.
So if you wanna just,
If we'll
Hold
try
it,
to figure
revisit.
out who that is, but in the meantime, we'll go to the next item if that's okay with everyone. Okay, so circular economy waste collection calendar. This was
I think I got cut off too on a previous one where we had staff here. My understanding is that there was inclusion, which was great, around this, how we leverage our annual calendar that's hard copy that goes to all residences around pushing things tied to sustainability, circular economy, and other promotional pieces. I think if I'm correct, my personal recollection is, Living Green Barrie was doing some phenomenal work over the past year around 10 themes. And how do we partner and incorporate that? So the Tread Lightly initiative. So how do those 10 themes, if they become an annual regular cycle, get reflected in partnership with some of the stuff we're aiming to do with city programming? So I'm not sure, Andy, if you're able to speak to that, but I think that was more just an interest to say every year when this calendar goes out, does this committee have an interest around looking at a review of how our assets or opportunities around public messaging, education, activation support sustainability?
So I will say thanks to you moving that forward. I did get a meeting and submitted a bunch of information to them. And in the calendar right now, there's a little blurb about Living Green Barrie, which is amazing. I'm really happy that it's in there. And then 2 set dates that we picked, which is always for tree planting, because regardless of what else happens, that's when the trees want to be planted. So we knew that we could pick the first Saturday in May and the Saturday closest to Halloween. And so they put those right into the calendar. So thank you very much for moving that forward. So I think it's a good first step. I think I'm sure that they're a little worried about a slippery slope of everyone wanting all their stuff in there, but I do feel like that helped with the credibility of Living Green. Having 31 years in this town, I think we've established ourselves as still presumably being here next year. So
You have, Andy, yeah.
thank you.
We'll
Awesome.
keep the secret of the calendar among
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe next year they can, if there's another Bike the Night event, that can be in there as well.
Well, it'll be an interesting asset in general for us to maybe consider as a committee or the next term of the committee, but maybe
Yeah.
before we close our term, what do we want to see incorporate into the calendar from a resident engagement, education around pieces, and does active transportation tie in? I know it's a waste calendar, like I know it's more on that lens, but it's a resource that gets into the hands of every resident. And so I wonder if there's a more strategic look about how this committee uses it to complement some of our work plan.
Who was it that Andy, you were connected with? Someone with Access Barrie, I'm assuming, or was it with the?
It was through
Circular
Sandra Bernay
Okay,
and
Sandra.
Aaron.
Okay.
Her name.
Okay, perfect. So maybe we can have this on our next agenda, and we can even make a bit of a request for some, like, I mean, putting Bike Week on, like, even if we haven't planned anything and there's nothing formal, it would be a great thing to put on the calendar every year. So maybe we can think up some suggestions for key communication pieces and invite Sandra to that next meeting to give her that feedback. Does that work for everyone?
Keenan, I'll start taking more bike photos and submitting those.
Yes.
Instead of my lake sunrise photos that they keep putting in the calendar.
Yes, amazing. That's great.
I'm gonna have to get you to sign my calendar, Eric.
I love that. That's
Sorry,
very
just
cool.
just to clarify, it was Chris O'Neill is
Chris
who
O'Neill.
I spoke with about that. So
Okay, that's
Okay.
great. I appreciate that. Okay. Are we all good on that item? Yeah, looking good. Awesome. Successful use of yield signs in Painswick.
Yes.
This is Eric, right? Yeah, okay.
Was mine, yeah. And I missed the meeting after I had put that on. So thank you for putting it on the agenda. I appreciate that. It's really a question, well, an observation first and a question maybe to staff, to Brett. In Painswick, there's a neighborhood there that I cycle through, and it's old Painswick that is now obviously part of Barrie. Yield signs through the entire neighborhood. It's that little neighborhood, I forget what it's called. Anyway, has Walnut, Spruce Street, Cherry, Peach. Like there's all these tree names. But anyway, there are yield signs everywhere. And I've seen that for a few years, and presumably those yield signs go back to when the neighborhood was built, but I don't know. So that's my first is a question. It appears to me it was some sort of experiment, and it's still there. So presumably it's operating well. That means safely and efficiently for the neighborhood and for the residents and the drivers through the neighborhood. If that's true, why aren't we doing this in many other places where a roundabout isn't practical physically, but the concept of a roundabout, which is yielding right of way, can work perfectly in neighborhoods and reduce emissions, reduce noise for stop start. It's just an all around friendly thing. And it boggles my mind. Why aren't we doing this everywhere? Anyway, I guess that's a question for Brett. Why that little neighborhood?
That's a great question. I wasn't aware of that. And to be fair, traffic services, they're the boots on the ground that deal with this more often, but I will definitely inquire with them on the history. I'll just throw in my conjecture. I think it likely works well in the subdivision as it's fairly isolated. There's no kind of through connections. So you see less pressure from folks that are driving more aggressively. And I would say there's likely some concerns around driver compliance with folks actually slowing down enough and potential pedestrian conflicts. It's I understand, like, and that's kind of the whole challenge with kind of the overuse of stop signs. In some instances, it gets into kind of a complex discussion. But I'll definitely reach out to traffic services to get a bit of history on this, why it still exists, why it's working well, would it be considered elsewhere, and maybe why it wouldn't be considered elsewhere as well. So no, that's a great question. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Brett. That would be great if you can look into it. And one of the things to look into would be, maybe, I don't know if you can do that or if I can do that, but into police reports, like neighborhood complaints. Is there complaints because of it? Incident and accident reports because of it? And if all that proves that there isn't increased accidents and that sort of thing, it helps substantiate the fact that it probably is a safe way to go.
Yeah, well, definitely my friends in traffic services, they definitely first ones to get the phone call. So I'll definitely reach out to them and see what their experience is on kind of complaints from residents or counselors, what they've heard, and see where that falls for sure. So appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your investigation in that. That's it.
That's interesting, Eric. And it made me think it might be helpful for us to have a more in-depth conversation with traffic services and get a sense for maybe where some of the hotspots of trouble are throughout the city, and if there's anywhere we should be focusing as a committee to advocate for safer active transportation infrastructure. So awesome points. Any other thoughts on this item before we move to the next one?
I think it was just actioning that comment, and then I thought that was a concept idea, maybe to give staff some time while Brett is connecting with traffic services. Perhaps see if they have any comment, Brett, around bringing anything back that would be of value to that conversation, then we could get them on the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm thinking they could definitely touch on that top 10 list from Barrie Police on those intersections, what they do as far as taking that data and doing an assessment on those hot spots and how they work through what's the potential solution, or maybe it's really a driver compliance issue. We can touch on this, and then I'll just have them potentially touch on any kind of common issues, common questions. I know one thing we're working through right now is potential just really introducing in the secondary planning areas the need to restrict parking to one side of local roads because of the increased density. So I'm working on a staff report right now. Well, this will likely be the first time council sees it when it does get submitted, but I think parking is a contentious issue on streets. So I'll see what kind of hot topics they can bring to the table on that as well. But I think that'd be a good flavor for them to start with anyways.
Not to load your plate, but there's, so I had a town hall, and part of the conversation that came up around safety around intersections was also around, I believe, Councillor Thompson, who's on the accessibility committee, talked about how they're doing a review or looking at, especially when you're on a bike or getting off a bike, or if you're on an assisted device and you are looking to kind of dismount and or access the pedestrian or the button. So I'd also love to, and I think there's relevance to this committee, love to hear about what's happening with that. And I think the accessibility committee was doing a review or analysis around recommendations or the current status of different light systems we have in the city that either motion to prompt you, or where it's weighted where you need a car almost to trigger the light to activate a pedestrian crossing.
Yeah,
So
no, that's those are great questions, and I'll definitely those folks will be able to give some good insight on that. So no, appreciate that. I'll pass that on to them.
That'd be great. Thanks.
No problem.
Okay, so in terms of having that conversation with them at a meeting, can we get Brandy to send out some invites? I don't know, Brett, who it is that you're connecting with, but
I'm connecting with the manager of traffic services, Steve Rose. So I'll
Okay,
speak
yeah.
with him, and I'll just mention the what we've talked about today. So if you folks let me know when this would be, if this is a next agenda item, I could let him know that, and he can prepare to be a special guest.
yeah, I think a March or April, like whatever would work for him too.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest April, because I know we
Yeah.
have a pretty full plates. So if that works for you guys, that'll be, I think, not cause issues on his end. So
Okay. Yeah, we definitely don't want to do
less
that.
issues potentially.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we
Or even
appreciate
if
that.
there's a timing that aligns with the accessibility committee, if Steve is involved in that work, it'd be interesting to see if they're coming forward with recommendations and to understand how that impacts our active transportation mandate.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Eric, did you have a thought on that?
And no, just back to the yield signs, just encourage anybody who may be interested to go check it out. It's a pretty novel thing. Right at the end of Hearst, where Hearst comes on to Big Bay Point, just keep going straight onto Pine Drive. And by the way, Brett, Pine Drive is a through. It loops all the way around and comes back. So there is, some traffic going through there.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Hannah?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Just one small thing to add. I know in Europe, they don't really have stop signs. They just have yield signs everywhere. And that's much easier for cyclists, because sometimes if they see there's no one coming, they don't have to stop. Yeah.
Ties back to, what is it called? The Idaho stop.
Yeah.
Like in the States, right? And when hoping to bike a little more this year, and when I bike more to work prior to having kind of fatherly responsibilities. Yeah, it's definitely, well, I don't know how many folks are coming to a complete stop, but yeah, it's interesting, and it'd be interesting to see if there's ever traction here. And I'm just not quite sure how broadly that's been adopted across the states, and if that's something that maybe the provinces would eventually do. But definitely, it's always helpful with those contentious legal issues if it's a top-down versus a bottom-up kind of approach.
Yeah. Regarding the Idaho stop too, like that is beneficial for bicycles, but if it's a yield sign, it's also beneficial to vehicles. And that's one of my main points actually, is when you're in a neighborhood that has a whole lot of small streets and stops, you're constantly hearing cars accelerating and stopping, and you get more emissions. Like there's a lot of benefits to just letting cars do a roll through. most people do it anyway already, to your point, Brett. Who stops completely, you know, in those situations.
And they shouldn't. I'll just say that. But
I know,
yeah,
obviously
for
they
sure.
shouldn't.
And it's I would have to think too. There must be an aspect with the pedestrian safety side potentially. So I think, not saying anything's wrong or right, but I just kind of looking at it full circle. Just the pros and cons. There's always that kind of balance, right? So it's definitely
For sure.
yeah, we'll definitely get traffic services in to get their feedback on their experience with that, and just to see what those folks have to say. Absolutely.
Thanks. I look forward to the feedback, and hopefully this hasn't triggered it to be stop signs in about a month.
Oh, it's like, oh, we forgot about that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Maybe we should check in on them.
It's like this little hidden gem, and now, darn it, they know about it.
Well, I'll say, look what Eric did.
Yeah.
I'll resign.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Protest. Oh, it's awesome. Okay, are we good to move on to the next item? Is everyone?
Thank you all for your comments. Thank you.
No, thank you. I love the topics that you bring to the table. It's great to have your on the ground knowledge. Okay, single tree bylaw public consultation. So I'm guessing Kevin Rankin might have a bit of an update for us on this piece, and perhaps the next item as well on the Gypsy Moth report. So hi, Kevin, welcome.
Hi.
Hope you're doing well.
Good morning.
Take it away.
Sure. I might maybe give a quick little history of that Pine Drive subdivision. It used to be ditched roads with no sidewalks. And then they urbanized it. So that might have a bit to do with yield signs. So
yeah.
Anyway, as far as our bylaw public consultation, there's a memo in circulation for council coming on the 14th or for the night of the 14th. It'll give an update on our progress. February 24th, 4 to 6 p.m. is the virtual PIC that's still on. Everything is, I guess, coming along well. We've got a survey done and ready to be posted on the website. We won't post it until the day of the PIC, so we can do the presentation and then post the presentation on the website as well, so people can see that before they start answering somewhat technical questions about what their personal choices are. So that one's good to go. It'll be up for a couple weeks, and then we'll do a summary of that and get it into council, and maybe even be able to give a little preview to this committee in April.
That'd be amazing.
What they are before we fire in the staff report, get some feedback. That's where we're at with it.
That's great. That's awesome news. Any questions from members of the committee on the single tree bylaw or the public consultation around that? So again, that was February 26th, you said?
24th.
24th.
Yep.
Okay.
4 to 6 p.m. There's about a 25-minute presentation, and then an hour and a half of Q&A.
That's awesome. That's great. Okay, and what about Gypsy Moth? Is there any update for us on that piece?
So February 8th, so next week at the City Building Committee meeting, there's going to be a presentation from an expert from Bioforest. Presentation will actually be about all the different management options for this coming year. It's the same consulting group who did our surveys for giving our population estimates for next year, and we've done that for us for a couple of years now with the growing populations. She'll be there for lots of Q&A. I'm sure they'll come back from the members who are in attendance, as well as giving a little update on what they expect for this spring in terms of gypsy mothers. 4 probably hot spots we'll likely see, but we'll see what happens after the high numbers of the virus and what's it called? Anyway, the natural predators that are out there, plus the cold winter we've had, we should see some help there in terms of numbers declining as well.
Anne-Marie, did you have a question on that?
Yeah, thanks. So this will come up with the city building, of course, but I thought I would add in cases of interest to the committee. And well, I've got you, Kevin. So I know we put in the budget $53,000 around addressing LDD moth issue. Spray has been in conversation in the past with lots of contention, of course. My understanding is our boundary areas with County of Simcoe municipalities, be it Springwater and others, are not proceeding to fund, although they investigated this. With the hot spots, I know many are looking at, how we can support what your team's done a great job of identifying what residents can do and what city staff will do on boulevard trees infested with some of the eggs. So my understanding in the public communication is we're trying to get residents to actually still scrape off the egg masses on some of these trees. I know a couple of roads that, you could just run your hand down a bunch of these masses. Is the city still available from a staffing resource to come out to trees? I believe that was promoted for residents to identify egg masses on trees. Staff will come out if they're on city property on boulevards and scrape them off. And ideally, I think we're trying to do that before they start hatching in May. That's
we'll still, no matter what, funding or not, we'll still be doing what we did this past year: egg mass scraping, banding, and burlapping. So those trees in hotspot zones. The Arboretum, Sunnydale Park, some particular neighborhoods had high numbers on the street trees as well. So, yep.
And would staff be coming back with a recommendation where best to spend that $53,000 around what we're using as staff or what we can make available to residents in the hotspot areas?
I don't think at the building committee meeting, it'll just be presenting what the various management options are to get feedback, because that was the direction was to come back with a presentation outlining the benefits and pros and cons of aerial spraying specifically, but also all the different management options that are available. Add that in. So at this point, really the 53,000 was the estimated cost of aerial spray of those hotspot zones.
Yeah, so I know that's raised many concerns for residents as well. And my understanding is the likelihood is low based on that option. I'll leave it to city building, but I thought I would mention it here just in case this committee had a position on how money was spent and what recommendations come forward, and from a sustainability environmental perspective, if the committee promoted the city going one way or another.
So I would say that, if the way the motion was worded gives us a bit of flexibility. If aerial spray is off the table, there are many other management techniques that are as costly too, but we can do things like injections. We injected a lot of trees through the Sunnydale area with triazin, which is the same natural biocontrol agent that's used for dealing with emerald ash borer. So definitely could look into doing more of that and on trees that have had a couple of years of defoliation and are at higher risk.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, did you have some thoughts on that?
A question for you, Kevin. So we were going to put out another call just through our newsletter for volunteers and the idea is to base it related to how we did the Spring into Clean when we couldn't really gather. We just said, okay, here's what you should do on your own. If you're looking for volunteer hours, let us know what amount of time you did and we'll sign your volunteer sheet, because we sort of an honesty program. And then what I'm wondering is, would it be of benefit, in your opinion, for us to do that, a more formal call for volunteers to do the egg scraping? And if so, can we maybe on an off this meeting have a little chat about how you would like to see that laid out? Because we do have more volunteers than we have things for them to do right now, and I'd love to give someone something that they can do.
That would be fantastic. We did organize a fair number of groups and individuals and stuff that were doing egg mass scraping across the city. some in parks, some on street trees, etc. So to get more volunteers who'd be interested, that'd be great. It'd be easy for us to train them. It's not hard. Give them a bucket and a scraper and away they go.
That'd be great. Could you loop me in after your conversation? Because I'd love to know if part of that conversation also touches on how we support residents that are reaching out but are not physically able to manage trees on their private property. That's a common question that has come up around trying to be proactive with the prevention or management of this in environmentally nice ways, but just physically are not able to do it and are looking for some support.
Great. This conversation is making me have like trauma flashbacks to killing caterpillars in my parents' yards. Scary stuff.
Yeah, and to market it, we have to come up with a more attractive name than egg mass scraping.
Yeah.
Squishy party.
Squishy party.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Okay, any other questions or comments on either the single tree bylaw public consultation or the LDD moth piece? No. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. We appreciate you being here and giving us that update. The last item is active transportation education / event. And I don't know if this was separate from the bike the night thing. I think it might have just been added as an item. Oh, or is it a separate item? Andy, do you know if that
Sorry,
was
I should maybe I was a little too quick on that one. So I don't know if this is why this item is on here. I didn't add an item to here, but I had something to put here.
Perfect. We'll go.
I'll just do that. I'll just jump ahead of the queue since you got me anyway, and just mention a separate event. So on Earth Day, which is the 22nd, it's a Friday, and the following Saturday, Living Greenberry wants to do an Earth Day native tree and shrub sale combined with our rain barrel sale. We are looking for a location. If anyone has any ideas, we've decided that we'd rather go with a private location rather than a public location based on COVID, and in general, the city's a little bit probably the most gun shy on if things are being released, then it'd be easier for us to plan and a little bit more concrete that it might happen if we can find a private location like a church or a business or if somebody has an idea. But the idea behind it would be we'll have rainbarrel.ca's repurpose rain barrels, their composters, some education pieces associated with it. So it's not just about the sale. And then obviously our native tree and shrub sale, and again, really focused on the education piece of it. So if we're successful with this, because all of you have figured out ways to promote it as well, then we'd love to get anything that active transportation has, a messaging, because again, it's going to be a very targeted audience of people who are really interested in this. So again, Bike the Night would be an obvious one to put, if we can get some little handbills, if we've got a date by that time, or any other information. And then again, this will be an outdoor, ideally under a couple of large tents with rain. I need to have the location needs to be somewhere that a truck can get in with all the rain barrels. So it has to be a fairly large one, so don't say the farmer's market. People keep coming back thinking that's a good idea, but we'll never get that truck in there. So if anyone has any ideas, and then again, if you want to add any information to it, that would be great. And really, I've already spoken with Sandra Brene about this and how we can incorporate some of the circular economy information into this event. And again, if we can do it on a private property, all the better. So sorry if that was probably not what this piece is, because I didn't put that in the agenda, but I'm exploiting it. So
that's all right. Yeah, go for it. That's great. I saw Kelly's hand next, and then Laurel on what Andy just said, or if this item means something different, talk about that too.
That item just got kind of tied into Bike the Night item. I don't see that as a separate item at all.
Yeah.
That's number one. But what I wanted to note or ask, is there any way that we could let Living Green be the complete and sole bearer of selling rainbows in the city, and not to confuse anything. That's the Andy speak. Is that an item? I just, because I know there's I know the city sells them, but doesn't it kind of make sense to have a better collaboration there? And I don't know if that's possible. I know, Andy, but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I do have some information on that beyond just obviously I want that, which is that the city put out a 5-year contract. And so with EnviroWorld, we're the contractors that got that contract. So they're locked in, I think, for at least another 2 years, if not 3, depending. I've lost all track of time. So that at some point that would be great. But they are locked into doing that. So it's not 100% in conflict, because it doesn't, from when I talked to Adam McMullen about it, he's good with 40 different sales. Like, rain barrels are great. We're not in conflict with the city. The city doesn't benefit or from the sale. It's just that the city council in particular were saying, no, you have to, we want you to do a rain barrel sale. We want to have that access, but it wasn't part of their mandate that they had to do. So they said, okay, well, let's contract it out. EnviroWorld got it. We deal with rainbarrel.ca, which is a very different organization, but thanks for the plug, Kelly.
Something to think about for sure. Laurel, go ahead.
Mine was just a comment to Andy about the mall, like when you did the Christmas trees there. Is that still an option? I thought it was really well organized and it was easy to get in and out. And
it is an option. The Georgian Mall would like to work with us again. The negative part of it, and these are just those little details you find out, is that Rio Can requires $5 million liability, whereas we have $2 million liability. So we had to get a special insurance for that, which was an additional $300. So it's just like, well, that eats into the cost. So we could go there. But then the other part to it is, as much as the mall gave us this great location for the Christmas tree sale, I don't think we generated more traffic because it was at the mall. People were like, no, I'm here to buy J. Crew stuff, not.
Yeah.
I don't know if it needed to be at the mall, and we could have it there because they would like to promote us. But again, we'd have to up our insurance significantly. But thank you.
Insurance always gets in the way, eh? Cheers. Anne-Marie, did you have some thoughts?
Just 2. I'll send you kind of 2 links. One is April 22nd, I believe, is Earth Day. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that ties in nicely to anything related to garden prep. Maybe the gin is like in community garden. Saturdays, that parking lot is not busy. It wouldn't give you a lot of roadway access, but that could be a relationship explored. The other one I'm thinking of, Urban Pantry uses the Free Methodist Church. They've been quite kind. You would get some great line of sight off Pendles, but maybe that could be explored because you've got that huge parking lot area, and maybe other pop-ups could actually go in and it would be an easy in and out and set up. If Urban Pantry has a contact there with the church.
I will check into that. The one that was suggested to me was the Mapleview Church, just simply because there's such an enormous area, and I believe that they have kept their outdoor tent set up throughout all of COVID, so they might be already set up. So if anyone has a contact there, that's on my to-do list, is to give them a call as well.
I can link you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great suggestions. Awesome. Okay, any other questions, comments, thoughts on those agenda items? Kelly, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute still.
Yeah, okay. How long can you talk on that? Just a suggestion. Number one, I have 2 things quickly. For the committee, if we could receive an update, I don't know if it's monthly or bi-monthly or every 6 months, on the items that have gone out to council as motions. If I feel sometimes a little lost from meeting to meeting, what we haven't covered and what we have covered, and what's still in the hopper, and what's been resolved. So I'm not sure if that would be helpful to kind of like a summary of what's still out there. It's just a suggestion.
No, that's great. The clerk's office does have the pending list, which is all the things passed by council on the status of those. I know sometimes we fall a bit behind on keeping that list updated, but I will inquire with or Brandy can check in on that for us, but I can probably reach out to Wendy too and see if where the pending list is at. I don't know, Brandy, if you know at all off the top of your head how that pending list is and if it would be able to be circulated.
I don't know off the top of my head, no, but I can look into that and I'll get back to you.
Okay,
I know there's probably not a lot of items, that relate to active transportation, but just as a conversation. So certainly for the people that are on the committee that have joined, that a couple of the items that are still out there. My second thing was for Brett. Brett, I heard you say that staff were looking at the $50 million that's available from the federal government. I say that big money. It's for capital projects as well as individual projects. Does Active Transportation Committee, are we able to have any influence on what projects we think might be suitable for grants, or is that something that you come back to? And I can't remember the deadline for the grants, but my thought went to the Ann Street Bridge and the separated bike lanes for that. And I know that's just a pipe dream, but I just said it anyway. So I'm not sure what the status is there.
I'll dig up the grant policy that corporate asset management, they kind of oversee that. So I'll share that with you and I'll reach out to them as well. Typically, just off the top of my head, just at a high level, I can't answer that question specifically, but we're looking at projects already in the capital plan. We're looking at projects to maximize the return. And we're just I'm trying to understand right now what are the boundary conditions, but like you mentioned the separated aspect, and I don't want to get back on that issue, but just the bike lanes themselves on Ann is one project that's come to mind as a larger dollar item that might be something we go for. Really, that's kind of the primary angle, is trying to maximize our chances of success and maximizing the potential of return. But I will look at that, and I will look to see if there's any issue if the committee wanted to put forward a separate application for something, and if that would have any impacts, and if that's something aligns with the process that the council signed off on as well. So I'll look into that for you folks.
Thank you, Brett.
You're welcome.
That's great. Anne-Marie?
I had 3 just quick announcements, FYIs, if we've got time.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I sent some links out just based on the conversations I was pulling together anyway, so I sent that to the group. But February the 3rd, the city closes a call for a position for climate action coordinator. Just hoping to send that out as a reminder and to leverage our networks if possible to try and get some great candidates coming forward for that role. Secondly, on the conversation around the grant from an active transportation, it reminded me of a past conversation we had with Firebird that was doing a grant months and months back. And I believe it was around getting bike repair stands purchased and then support through the city around where they could be actually secured. I didn't know if we've heard from Firebird around the status of that. I'm assuming that they weren't successful because so much time has gone by, but I'm keen to see about how we also maybe tap into this potential grant if it fits under capital around bike repair stations and support the vision that they brought forward a little while ago. So I guess I'll take a look at that and see, but Andy should, I'm assuming we should reach back out to Firebird if there's something we can support here or make sure they're aware of that grant.
I'll check into it. I know that they applied for a Trillium Resilient Communities grant, I think it was, and weren't successful with that one. And then I know that they would tried for another one. I'm racking my brain as to whether they gave up on submitting it because of timelines and everyone's a volunteer, or did they submit it and they weren't successful? As far as I know, though, there's nothing that they're waiting to hear back from that would imply that they would have got the funding for that. And but just on that note, one thing I know that is a bigger issue is that these things need to be maintained. So you put these out all around the city. There has to be worked into whatever it is. How are you going to, in year 2, 3, 4, replace some of the items that are broken or missing or whatever it might be? So that I think is one of the biggest barriers to them is the long-term maintenance.
So I guess my questions, and maybe it's a future conversation and inviting Firebird to come to the table, is one, is this important infrastructure for us to acquire? Should we be looking at the grant as an opportunity? Personally, like for me, I was keen to see one actually get stationed at the East Bayfield Community Center, or, would love to know if there was information that Firebird gathered around areas that they would say would be strategic and important for us to actually add more bike racks and bike repair stations. And then from there, an understanding of what is that annual cost or, year-over-year cost of if they get damaged or vandalized, repairing them. But I was keen to see if that type of infrastructure was moving ahead as part of supporting cyclists. So I'll leave it there and then maybe just see where that goes and if it's something that we could support if they wanted to see that moving forward. Lastly, I'll mention it as an FYI. So thanks to Kevin Rankin, who connected me with the Barrie Public Arts Committee. We have an art installation that's being designed by a local artist. It does have a climate action, native species, pollinator theme to it. We're meeting this afternoon. It is something that we are looking to have erected in the East Bayfield Community Park behind the community center. I'll keep you updated, but love to see about once this has a bit more of a design, we can introduce you to it as a committee. We'd also love to look at the committee being maybe part of when that's installed, being present, hearing about the storytelling of that piece. We'd also love to look at it in concept. Is this also something that supports the mandate of this committee in some way around, inviting the public to come into that green space, but also how do we link this even to some of our schools in the surrounding area around outdoor education? So I'll lead you into that, but hoping in the next couple of months, I can give you some more information and share a design.
That's exciting. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Anne-Marie. We have a few minutes until noon. Does anyone else have anything that they want to bring up at the moment? Any future ideas for agenda items that you want to raise now? Feel free to send an email after, though. Any good stories about anything going on? No. Kelly, so you're desperately waving now. This better be a good story.
I didn't want to miss my opportunity to thank Kevin Rankin and his team, and I think it's Kevin who does it, but I was out at 8 o'clock this morning cross-country skiing on our beautiful, not very well-known, groomed cross-country ski trails at Sunnydale Park. So I really wanted to be so grateful and thankful. I cannot tell you, I just have to figure out how to hook my skis onto my back, on my bicycle, as long as this active transportation thing, I'm working on that. I need new tires, I guess, I don't know. But I just want to thank you. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for the city, for the people of Barrie. So thank you.
A small heads up, the trail is going to get expanded a little bit in the next week or two for the more winter fest activities taking place up there in the next month. So make him a little bit bigger. That's probably the most fun thing that the parks people do in the summer is to groom the trail. So
that's not very cool. Very cool. I'll have to get out there. It sounds like fun. Okay, anything else from any committee members? Again, if you think of agenda items, feel free to reach out to myself and Brandy. If you're interested in getting involved with the Bike the Night event, contact Anne-Marie, John, and Kelly. And
And Laurel, you're now on.
Laurel is in there too. Awesome. The team's growing. By the way, Laurel, I love the wall behind you. That is very
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah, I had a friend living with me for part of COVID and she painted her wall. I was very thankful. It's great.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's very cool.
Quite talented.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for a wonderful meeting. Always great to see all of you. And thank you so much to the staff members who took all the time to be here with us today and gave us all this amazing information. Thank you to Brandy for all your technical support and for taking the minutes. All right.
Well, I'm now having to put a budget together to purchase an EV vehicle.
Nice. Nice. Very exciting. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. With that, I will adjourn the meeting. All right. Take care and we'll